This is Damon Cart from NLP Gym. The truth about motivation. It's not what you think it is. Stay tuned. When we talk about motivation, motivation to learn NLP, motivation to make more money, motivation to lose weight or get healthier, motivation to actualize my potential. I mentioned I was coaching someone, and I was a little surprised he wanted coaching because he seemed to be on the ball with everything. He seemed to be very smart. He seemed to know what he wanted and to be very clear about it. So after picking his brain a little bit, I was like, okay, so what's the problem here? What's going on? And he said, well, I feel like I've lost my mojo. I feel like I've lost my motivation. And I said, okay, you're going to have to convince me that motivation is a thing and that you lost it somewhere and you got to go back and find it. Because there's no such thing. And if you listen to people's language like that, sure, I know he's talking sort of metaphorically. But when you talk about things that way, when you talk about motivation that way, you actually are programming in thinking about it that way. Oh, sometimes I have motivation, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I lose my motivation and I have to go and find it. Well, you're treating it as an object, and motivation is not that. In fact, a lot of times I like to say there's no such thing as motivation, and that's literally true because it's not a thing. And in some cases, I don't even want to acknowledge that there's motivation, there's not motivation. Because when you want something, there is motivation. The fact that you have desires is motivation. The fact that you have values is motivation. The problem that happens is sometimes what we want is something we were taught to want, something we were programmed to want at a very young age. You want to make good grades. When I'm a kid, I don't know any better. I don't know how this is going to affect the rest of my life, but I trust my parents, so I say, okay, yeah, I need to make good grades. And am I motivated to do that? I'm not motivated to make good grades. I'm motivated to please my parents. And that is a very strong part of us, most of us, not all of us, but as a very strong part of us that brings us in, usually follows us around until about midlife, and we start to go, to hell with that. Mom and dad were wrong, even though we thought we did that when we were teenagers and we rebelled. But a lot of times these programs are very unconscious and they follow us around, and we start to get to a point where we realize that the things we want, we're lacking motivation for. Why are we lacking motivation for that? Because they're not truly things that we want. Because they're really not about wanting the thing, or we don't really value what it is we're chasing. We're still valuing pleasing our parents, and we get to a point where we realize we've been doing this for too long. Or it might even be parents, it could be society, whatever values you were taught, whatever cultural system, the values of whatever cultural system you were brought up in, the value system of whatever society you were brought up in, and then whoever brought you up. So it doesn't have to be your parents, but whoever influenced you the most, who taught you their values and taught you that you should value that. We get to a point where that starts to wear thin, and we start realizing, oh, all these things that I thought I wanted are not actually things that I want. And you may have even achieved them, and you achieve them, and you think, oh, this doesn't really fulfill me. And some people double down, and they think, oh, well, my parents said making money was, being successful was really important, and how they thought of success was making a lot of money, so I made my first $1 million, and it feels good to have financial security, but there seemed to be something deeper I was chasing, and now that I have my first $1 million, I'm not fulfilled, so what do I do now? Well, some people will go the opposite direction. They'll say, money is not the answer, I'm going to go on some spiritual journey, and I'm going to go seek out fulfillment in another way. And some people will say, well, I guess I didn't do enough. I need to make another $1 million. And then they make another $1 million, and then the same thing happens. Motivation, you will always be motivated toward your values, whatever you find valuable. That is motivation itself. If I want a sip of coffee, I don't sit back and say, do I have the motivation to reach over and pick up the coffee? Well, no, I don't. There's nothing in my way, so I can pick up the coffee and take a sip. And if I value the taste of coffee or the way that it makes me feel, there's not going to be a problem there. And that's the same with all of your values. So when you're feeling this thing that they call lack of motivation, you need to find out really quickly, well, first of all, ecology. What is in my way? What is getting in the way? Is there some other part of me that has another motivation, that has another positive intent, that is overriding, or I'm not recognizing it, therefore it's trying to get my attention? The other thing could be you are starting to realize that what you think you should want is not what you want, because it's not one of your own values. It's a value your parents implanted. It's a value that your society or culture valued, and you're realizing that's not really who you are. It's not really what you want. Of course, your motivation is going to fall away. And then your values might be unconscious. Most people don't know what their values are, and if they're not clear about that, they're going to go searching in the dark, and they're going to be looking for anything that they're looking for, that spark. They're looking for that motivation without understanding what their values are. Now, when you understand what your values are, it's much simpler to find out what will fulfill that value. And if you know what your value is and you know what will fulfill that value, you don't have to think about motivation. It just happens. So in the case of this guy, when he was saying he lost his motivation, he was in the process of switching jobs too. And I said, okay, well, I listed his values, and I said, what are you getting any of these values met in the job that you're at? And he said, well, no, that's why I'm leaving. I said, well, no wonder you aren't motivated, because if you started to realize that your values are not going to be met at this job, it's the job, it's not you. And in a sense, it's you, because you're in the wrong place. But what I had to explain to him, you have an inner wisdom, and your unconscious knows that no matter how hard you work, you're not going to fulfill your values. So why would you be motivated to do that? And a light bulb went off for him, and he was in the process of switching jobs. And so I said, look, what you need to do is see if really quickly at this new job, if you can get these values met. Now sometimes we say, oh, well, I don't like my boss, so I can't get my values met here. But some of it, you have to make your adjustments to it. You have to make your own adjustments to the situation. You can't just walk around planet Earth saying, well, that doesn't fulfill my values, so I'm not going to do that, or that doesn't fulfill my values, I won't do that. We still have to make money, we still have to take care of ourselves, we still have to take responsibility. And we can make adjustments internally to make a situation meet our values. But sometimes it's just not going to happen. If somebody does not value owning a car, you can beat them senseless trying to convince them. It's just not, they're not going to be motivated to do it, because it's just not what they want. It doesn't fulfill them in any way. So going back to learning NLP, if you're lacking motivation to practice and learn NLP, it's important to get back to the original values, whatever it was you were seeking in learning NLP. And then you might have to assess, am I going to get my values met here learning NLP? Now knowing what I know, is that going to happen? I would say for most people, because NLP is so varied and it has so many uses, and it's basically a communication model, and it's also a model to help you get what you want. It's hard to say that it's not something that a person would find valuable. The main thing I think is people go about this in different ways. Some people prefer meditation, some people prefer yoga, some people prefer many different types of, I guess, modalities or methodologies. Some work for you and some don't, because there's something about it that works for you naturally. NLP, I just connected with it right away. Who knows why? People come to me and say, oh, you should learn Landmark and all this stuff like that. And all that is good. I think that their stuff is good from what I know about it, or whatever other personal development methodology or technology. Just this one fit with me the best. Who knows why that is? Who knows why we even value what we value? It just did. So that's why I connected with it. So when it comes to being motivated to learn NLP, to practice NLP, it's really important to get back to what attracted you to it to begin with. What are those values? Elicit those values. And then get back to that. And then what you might understand then is there might be other parts of you that want to go do something else. rather than practice NLP. So get in touch with those parts, find out what their positive intents are, chunk up to whatever the highest values are, and then find ways to incorporate those parts into learning NLP, into getting what you want out of NLP. It's really important to know beyond NLP what you want. And what I mean by that is, if I knew NLP really well, and if I was highly skilled at it, what would that do for me? And that's the value behind it. So a lot of people don't really know what that is. They've seen somebody do an NLP demonstration, they go, oh, I want to do that. I saw, when I got to Santa Cruz, I saw people surfing. And I said, oh, I want to do that. I didn't know why I wanted to do it. I just knew I wanted to do it. When I actually got into surfing, well, it was very frustrating at first. And I wasn't getting my value, or whatever value I was seeking, fulfilled, because I couldn't stand up on the board. Finally, when I started standing up on the board and started surfing, I realized, I don't know if I knew this all along, that this was the value I was going to get, but what I realized is, in that moment of surfing that wave, I wasn't thinking about the past, present, or the future. So it was very meditative, and I felt like it was timeless. And in that timelessness, I was totally free. And freedom is a high value of mine, probably my highest. Who knows, when I saw people surfing, did I see that? Did I see them expressing freedom? Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what triggered me to do it, but something drew me in to do that. And we have that, and that is the hero's journey. That is our life's purpose. Something draws us into something, and we don't know why exactly. But most of the time, it's this idea that we are going to fulfill some sort of value. And how we make that connection, it's rather mystical, I think. It's kind of extraordinary. Something attracts you, and that is reason enough to seek it out or learn more about it. And I don't surf too much anymore, but I certainly don't regret the time that I spent doing it, or the frustration that I endured in order to be able to surf, because I had some amazing experiences, and ultimately I think it helped me as a person and nurtured me in some ways. So NLP is the same thing. Something initially attracted you to it. Get in touch with that value, and that'll help guide you certainly motivate you, and it'll help guide you in where you want to go with this, because there's so many different directions you can go with NLP. There's so much that you learn. Do you want to be more persuasive? Do you want to go into sales and be a great salesperson? Do you want to be a therapist? Do you want to be a coach? Do you want to just be really good at communication? You can plug NLP into almost anything, but if you're not clear about where you want to go with it, if you're not clear about what motivates you to learn it, if you're not clear about the value you're looking to fulfill, again, you're searching in the dark, and you still may find what you're looking for, but it's a lot harder. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please click like and hit the subscribe button as well, so you can get future videos on a regular basis. And also, if you have a comment or a question, feel free to leave it right down here as well. I will follow up with you. Remember to check out my website, nlp-gym.com, and follow me on Facebook for real-time updates on talks and trainings and workshops I'm giving. I also host other teachers like Dr. Matt, who will be coming here to Santa Cruz, California on November 4th to give 3 talks. You definitely want to make that. Keep practicing NLP and treat it like it's exercise. Treat it like it's working out. It's something you do daily. It's a lifestyle. Take care.